For decades, the US nuclear weapons policy was structured around deterring and responding to the threat from the only nation with a nuclear arsenal larger than its own, Russia. But now that's all changed. As revealed in the New York Times on August 20, 2024, the US has updated its highly classified nuclear employment guidance document to focus on 3 countries, not just one. This means that from the US's point of view, if nuclear war were to break out, the nation would have to destroy these 3 other nations: China, Russia, and North Korea. But how would the US destroy China, Russia, and North Korea simultaneously in a nuclear war? We'll answer that question shortly, but first, what prompted these changes from such a long-standing position in the first place? There are several compelling reasons why the updated guidance makes a lot of sense. Firstly, since the start of Russia's war in Ukraine in February 2022, Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that if Russia's sovereignty were threatened, they would use nuclear weapons to defend themselves. On multiple occasions, he warned that since the combined conventional arsenal and military spending of NATO members exceeds Russia's by up to 5 times, Russia's nuclear weapons doctrine does not provide for preemptive first strikes. Secondly, North Korea has become increasingly belligerent towards the US's main allies in the region, Japan and South Korea, no doubt buoyed by rapidly expanding economic and military cooperation with Russia since the start of the war. Russia has always supported and will continue to support the DPRK and the heroic Korean people in their opposition to the insidious, dangerous, and aggressive enemy, Putin declared during his state visit to Pyongyang in June 2024. He added that Moscow was looking to sign a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty with North Korea in the near future. Throughout 2024, hardly a week seems to have gone by without the North Koreans launching missiles into the Sea of Japan or sharing footage of leader Kim Jong-un overseeing new weapons facilities and testing new and increasingly sophisticated weapons. On top of that, a recent spat involving North Korea launching hundreds of balloons filled with garbage and human excrement into South Korea, in response to the South launching drones containing flash sticks filled with Western music, films, and propaganda into the North, has only heightened tensions in the area. With Kim Jong-un being the loose cannon that he is, this increased bellicosity is certainly a cause for concern. But it's the third nation on the list, China, which is the main focus of the amendments to the US's nuclear doctrine. It's no secret that both the President Joe Biden administration and former President and current candidate Donald Trump view China as the biggest threat to the US, not Russia. We're pivoting to China, renowned professor of political science John Mearsheimer puts it. Again, it's a strategic decision that makes a lot of sense given China's growing potential and capacity, if not appetite, for nuclear war. In the last decade, China's stockpile of nuclear warheads has grown by 150%, from around 200 to over 500. Most experts concur that their aim appears to be reaching 1,000 by 2030, an achievable objective at the current rate of production. Some experts believe that they could have as many as 1,500 by 2035. This number would still be significantly less than what the US has at its disposal. However, with nuclear-capable missiles able to reach anywhere within the continental US, not to mention Japan, Australia, or South Korea, each new missile represents a marginal but tangible new threat. As further evidence of China's growing nuclear threat, analysts also point to the large-scale production of new missile silo sites on the Chinese mainland. Although it's not been confirmed that these silos are specifically for nuclear weapons, in the summer of 2021, at least 3 vast new silo sites were discovered via satellite imagery in north-central China, as well as at the training site of the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, or PLARF for short, near Jilantai. Estimates vary, but it appears that between 100 and 350 new silo sites have been constructed or are currently under construction. The US sees this threat. But perhaps the most compelling reason behind the US changing its nuclear focus from prioritizing Russia to focusing on a combination of China, Russia, and North Korea is the increasingly comprehensive cooperation between these 3 nations. We've already mentioned the deepening relationship between Moscow and Pyongyang, but China and North Korea have formally been allies since the signing of a mutual defense treaty in 1961. Although they're certainly not always on the same page, especially with regard to human rights and North Korea's missile provocations, there's no reason to suspect that should either or both nations be threatened militarily by the US, they wouldn't leap to each other's defense with the full scope of their military power. But definitely of greatest concern to the US is that the relationship between China and Russia has also strengthened massively since the onset of Russia's war with Ukraine, particularly as a result of the unprecedented sanctions placed on Russia by the US as a consequence. Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin clearly share a strong personal bond, bolstered by regular high-level exchanges and meetings. Both have described each other as good friends. Fueled by a common desire to curb American power and challenge what they see as US hegemony, the result of this deepening mutual political trust has been rapidly expanding cooperation. Bilateral trade reached a record $240 billion in 2023, exceeding the target of $200 billion. According to Putin, some 90% of this trade is now conducted in yuan and rubles, not the US dollar. China and Russia have also expanded cooperation in energy, infrastructure, and technology, and together are driving the growth of increasingly influential multinational organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation Agreement, the Eurasian Economic Union, and the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South African Economic Coalition known as BRICS. Indeed, although somewhat short of a conventional alliance, the two countries have emphasized that their relationship has no limits and no forbidden areas of cooperation. So if one or the other was attacked by US nuclear weapons, it would be naive to imagine that they wouldn't combine nuclear forces to strike back. These shifts on the global geopolitical and military chessboard are the basis for the US changing its nuclear policy to require the destruction of all three countries, China, Russia, and North Korea, in one go should nuclear war break out. But how easy or difficult is that going to be? How capable are China, Russia, and North Korea of defending themselves against a nuclear attack from the US? And perhaps more importantly, how much of a nuclear threat do these nations pose to the US and its allies in Asia, Oceania, and Europe if they decide to strike back? Let's take a look at how the nuclear capabilities of both sides measure up, starting with the least powerful of the four, North Korea. According to a definitive 2024 report called Status of the World's Nuclear Forces from the Federation of American Scientists, FAS for short, the exact number of nuclear weapons in each country's possession is a closely held national secret, so any estimates presented come with significant uncertainty. Nonetheless, the report estimates North Korea to have a stockpile of around 50 nuclear warheads, which are all considered as reserve non-deployed, meaning they are not currently loaded onto missiles ready to be deployed at short notice. They can, however, be attached to the North Korean-made KN-23 and KN-25 short to medium-range ballistic missiles, which have an estimated diameter of 15 to 20 inches and can carry at least 10 warheads per missile. These missiles are certainly capable of reaching Japan, South Korea, and US assets like aircraft carriers in the region. But North Korea has also successfully tested ICBMs, short for Intercontinental Ballistic Missiles, including the Hwasong-14 and Hwasong-15, which are believed to have the capacity to deliver a nuclear payload anywhere in the United States. Both ballistic and ICBM missiles can be launched either from a variety of land-based MLRS or multi-launch rocket systems, or from submarines by means of submarine-launched ballistic missiles, or SLBMs. For the US, incoming SLBMs from North Korea will likely be the trickiest to detect and eliminate. As for defending itself against incoming US nukes, North Korea does boast a complex and multi-layered air defense system, including Soviet-era Russian-made SA-2, SA-3, and SA-5 surface-to-air or SAM systems, over 8,000 anti-aircraft guns, including the ZPU-4 and ZPU-23, the Pyongyang-5 mobile air defense system, also known as KN-06, and electronic warfare capabilities to disrupt enemy air defenses and radar systems, including radar jamming and electronic countermeasures. Are these defenses going to be any good against a nuclear attack? Although they might have some success defending against attacks from F-35 fighters and nautically launched missiles, it's unlikely that their limited, outdated air force and aging Soviet air defenses will be able to handle incoming arrivals from the B-2 Spirit or soon-to-be-unleashed B-21 stealth bombers. All else being equal, given the great mismatch in power, a nuclear clash between the US and North Korea should end in crushing defeat for the DPRK, albeit with substantial damage to Japan and South Korea, and possibly the continental US too. But as mentioned earlier, North Korea has a mutual defense pact with China, and China is an enemy on a completely different scale. As an offensive nuclear force, as noted before, China currently has around 500 nuclear warheads, which the FAS also classes as reserve non-deployed. The US Department of Defense estimates it currently has approximately 382 nuclear-capable land-based missiles, capable of delivering around 318 of those warheads. These missiles include the Hongniao or Redbird cruise missile, the Donghai-10 or DH-10, a second-generation land attack cruise missile with a range of over 2,500 miles, and a large inventory of SRBMs or short-range ballistic missiles, including the DF-21 family. Many of these missiles are stored in extensive tunnel complexes, including one under the Great Wall of China, which can be used to transport nuclear weapons and forces, and makes it potentially much more difficult for the US to destroy China's threat. China is also allegedly developing a fractional orbit bombardment system to add to the nuclear triad that it already has at its disposal to deploy these missiles. This nuclear triad comprises SLBMs, ICBMs, and strategic bombers. For the water-based part of the nuclear triad, China's submarine-launched missile, the Type 096 SSBN, is equipped with multiple independent re-entry vehicles and is capable of targeting the eastern United States from China's littoral waters. Their land-based DF-31, DF-31A, and JL-2 ICBMs are capable of targeting most of the world, including the continental United States, and the H-6 and Jan H-20 strategic bombers, allegedly also capable of carrying nuclear weapons, are being developed and tested currently. Like the US's B-2 and B-21 bombers, which we'll discuss in more detail shortly, China's H-8 and H-20 could conceivably strike from anywhere. What this all means is that although it's still way behind the US in terms of the quantity and destructive power of its warheads, China's weapons provide them with flexibility and a range of options, creating a much more unpredictable and dangerous foe than North Korea. But what about China's ability to defend itself from incoming US nukes? China's nuclear defenses are designed to deter and respond to nuclear attacks, rather than to prevent them entirely. So in that sense, the nuclear triad represents its main form of deterrence. However, should missiles come raining down, China has built a robust civil defense system, including emergency preparedness and response plans, to mitigate the effects of a nuclear attack. This includes stockpiling supplies, evacuating populations, and providing shelter and medical care. China's nuclear forces are also dispersed throughout its large territory to make them difficult for the US to target and destroy. To defend against missile attacks, China has deployed a substantial integrated air defense, including surface-to-air and anti-ballistic missile systems. These include advanced so-called double-digit Russian SAM missiles with ranges of over 125 miles, airborne surveillance and command aircraft equipped with the Airborne Warning and Control System, or AWACS, and stealth fighter jets such as the J-11 and J-15, which are claimed to be capable of engaging US stealth bombers and fighters. Taking all this into account, destroying China completely in a nuclear war is unlikely to be quick or easy, and is highly likely to come at substantial cost for the US and its allies. Then there's Russia to consider. For starters, China has a strict no-first-use nuclear policy, which has been in place since the 1960s. Much of its nuclear deterrence, and indeed the goodwill behind major Chinese multinational initiatives like the aforementioned BRICS and Belt and Road Initiative, are underpinned by China's dogmatic insistence that it will always remain faithful to this principle. So it's unlikely China would preemptively strike the US with nuclear weapons, even if a conventional war was going badly. Russia, on the other hand, like the US, has not handicapped itself with any such restraints, and Russia's threat as an offensive nuclear force is considerable. The FAS report estimates Russia's current stockpile of nuclear warheads to be 5,580. That's an amount over 99.9% larger than North Korea's and over 10% greater than the US's. Of those warheads, the FAS estimates 1,200 to be retired, leaving 4,380 active warheads, with 1,700 classified as deployed strategic, meaning the warheads are already deployed on ballistic missiles, at bomber bases, or on submarines, ready for action at any time. Like China and the US, Russia also has a nuclear triad to deliver these warheads, also consisting of air, land, and sea delivery systems, which are all undergoing rapid modernization. The land-based systems include both ICBMs and SLBMs, which are deployed in silos and on mobile launchers at numerous sites around Russia's vast territory. Russia currently deploys 5 ICBM platforms, including the modern R-2-2PM-2 Topol-M or Sickle-B, a single warhead missile, the modern RS-24 Yars or SS-29, which carries 4 warheads, and the older Soviet R-36M2 Satan and UR-100N Stiletto, which can carry 10 and 6 warheads respectively. The air component of the nuclear triad consists of 2 160 bombers, also known as Blackjack, and the older 285 MS or Bear H, which make up the majority of the fleet. Each Bear H can carry up to 16 AS-15A Kent cruise missiles, capable of delivering approximately 700 nuclear warheads. Each Blackjack is equipped with up to 12 AS-15B Kent B cruise missiles. Under the water, Russia also has 11 operational nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, SSBNs for short. Each SSBN can carry up to 16 SLBMs, capable of delivering up to 624 nuclear warheads. Russia is also deep in testing the Poseidon, a nuclear-powered autonomous underwater drone designed to carry a nuclear warhead weighing up to 2 megatons. If and when it's ready for action, it will be capable of causing devastating damage to coastal cities and naval vessels, and will potentially be unstoppable once launched. The two main types of Russian nuclear-capable missiles are the Burevestnik and the Kh-55, NATO AS-15 Kent. The Burevestnik, or 9M730 Burevestnik, is a nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed hypersonic cruise missile alleged to be invincible due to its ability to evade enemy defenses. The AS-15 is a nuclear-tipped, air-launched ballistic missile with a range of approximately 3,000 miles. If you're the US, this is the kind of nuclear force you want to hit first and hit hard before it hits you. But is Russia capable of defending itself against a nuclear attack? It turns out the sheer size of Russia and its many borders make it both difficult to destroy entirely and difficult to defend. Russia has developed a limited missile defense system, primarily focused on defending against intermediate-range ballistic missiles, IRBMs for short, and tactical ballistic missiles. These include the S-400 Triumph, a SAM system capable of engaging ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and aircraft, and the next-generation S-500 Prometheus system, designed to defend against ICBMs, IRBMs, and hypersonic targets. Russia is also developing active defense systems to counter ballistic missiles and hypersonic weapons, including the Avangard, a hypersonic boost glide vehicle capable of penetrating missile defenses. Russia has also gone to great lengths to defend its command and control systems and its military infrastructure against nuclear attack. This includes building a network of hardened shelters and bunkers to protect its military leadership and key personnel, and a civil defense system to evacuate and protect its civilian population in the event of a nuclear attack. But despite all of that, Moscow is under no illusions that Russia would suffer significant, possibly terminal damage in the event of a large-scale nuclear conflict. That's why Moscow's nuclear deterrent is, and always has been, based on the concept of mutually assured destruction, which in a wry twist of linguistic fate is abbreviated to MAD. Of course, the other major country whose nuclear deterrence is also based on MAD is the US. Like Russia and to a lesser extent all the world's other nuclear powers, the US's nuclear forces are designed to inflict unacceptable damage to an adversary, thereby discouraging it from initiating a nuclear conflict. The US has 5,044 nuclear warheads according to the FAS, almost as many as Russia. Of those, 1,336 are classed as retired, 100 are also deployed in Europe, and 1,670 are deployed in the US. Of the US's allies, France has 290 warheads deployed, the UK has a further 225, and Israel has 90, albeit unofficially. Although outnumbered by Russia in terms of number of warheads, the US's own nuclear triad for delivery of those warheads is more powerful. The US has developed various delivery systems capable of launching a nuclear attack from land, air, and sea, including rockets, surface-to-surface missiles, and SLBMs, which can accommodate different nuclear warheads for different purposes. On land, more than 10,000 personnel stand ready to deploy up to 400 on-alert, combat-ready LGM-30G Minuteman III ICBMs in hardened silos across 5 states to protect against attack. These are all connected to an underground launch control center through a system of hardened cables. The main sites are the 90th Missile Wing at F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, the 341st Missile Wing at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, and the 91st Missile Wing at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. The Minuteman III has a range of over 6,000 miles, a speed of 15,000 miles per hour, or Mach 23, a weight of over 79,000 pounds, and a ceiling of 700 miles. Originally fielded in the 1970s, continuous development and improvements mean the Minuteman III is still considered the gold standard in ICBMs globally. From the sea, ballistic missile submarines, or boomers, are undetectable platforms for submarine-launched ballistic missiles. The US's 14 Ohio-class SSBNs are on constant patrol, with enough firepower to make just one boomer the 6th most powerful nuclear power in the world. Each SSBN can carry 20 Trident II D5 ballistic missiles with multiple, independently targeted warheads. The These SSBNs make up the most survivable leg of the nuclear triad. Their stealth design makes finding them an almost impossible task, while ensuring that the US can strike anytime, anywhere, even after a surprise attack. From the air, the nation's bomber fleet, consisting of 46 nuclear-capable B-52H Stratofortress and 20 B-2A Spirit aircraft, is capable of providing massive firepower in a short time anywhere on the globe and of penetrating the most advanced defenses. The B-52 is a long-range, heavy bomber that can carry nuclear or precision-guided conventional weapons with worldwide precision navigation. In addition to delivering nuclear strikes, the B-52 can perform strategic attacks, close air support, air interdiction, offensive counter-air and maritime operations. It is highly effective when used for ocean surveillance, where just 2 B-52s in 2 hours can monitor 140,000 square miles of ocean surface. Although the use of aerial refueling gives the B-52 a range limited only by crew endurance, it has an unrefueled combat range in excess of 8,800 miles. The B-2 Spirit, on the other hand, is a multi-role stealth bomber capable of delivering both conventional and nuclear weapons. Its low observable or stealth characteristics give it the unique ability to penetrate an enemy's most sophisticated defenses and threaten its most valued and heavily defended targets. Its unrefueled range is approximately 6,000 nautical miles. The revolutionary blending of low observable technologies with high aerodynamic efficiency and large payload gives the B-2 important advantages over Russia and China's bombers. These include greater freedom of action at high altitudes, which increases its range and provides a better field of view for the aircraft sensors, and being more difficult for sophisticated defensive systems to detect, track, and engage. Although many aspects of the low observability process remain classified, the B-2's composite materials, special coatings, and flying wing design all contribute to its stealth. And if the US's fleet of B-2s, each with a payload of 40,000 pounds, wasn't intimidating enough, the US is currently testing its first 6th-generation stealth bomber, the B-21, with a fleet of 100 to 200 of these unmatched aircraft slated to replace the B-2s and B-52s by the mid-2030s. When it comes to defending against a nuclear attack, the Ground-Based Midcourse Defense, or GMD system, is the primary American defense, designed to intercept and destroy nuclear-tipped ICBMs launched at the continental US. The GMD system consists of radar systems and satellites that track incoming warheads, combined with defensive interceptor missiles launched from bases at Fort Greely, Alaska, and Vandenberg Air Force Base, California. As backup for the GMD, the US also has the sea-based Aegis system and Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, commonly known as THAAD, which has been adapted for homeland defense. And of course, it also has that powerful nuclear triad as deterrence. But arguably, the US's strongest defense against nuclear attack is the fact that great expanses of ocean separate it from its most hostile enemies, providing time and flexibility to defend and then retaliate hard against anyone foolhardy enough to launch a nuclear attack on the US mainland. That's how US nuclear forces stack up against the 3 nations that it will have to destroy if a large-scale nuclear conflict broke out. This leads us to the critical question: how would the US physically go about destroying Russia, China, and North Korea in a nuclear war? How would it approach the attack, and what would the targets be? We can assume that to destroy Russia and China, if not North Korea, a nuclear attack will be required. The US does not have enough manpower or conventional weapons to inflict a defeat of that scale, total destruction, on all 3 nations using conventional weapons only. It goes without saying that actual nuclear attack plans are top secret, so any scenario we devise is of course highly speculative. But if we have to take an educated guess, given what we know about the enemy's offensive and defensive capabilities, the US's approach might be something along the following lines. First, the US would hit all 3 countries with massive, targeted initial strikes, delivered as a complete surprise without any warning, and intended to decapitate the command and control structures in all 3 countries more or less simultaneously. Then, after a short pause to assess the damage and any attempts at retaliatory strikes, the US would follow up with coordinated strategic and tactical strikes on military targets and other infrastructure, with the aim of bringing China, Russia, and North Korea to their knees, unable to effectively defend themselves. Finally, conventional forces would move in and mop up and crush any last remaining pockets of resistance and take control. Targets for the initial strikes in Russia would be its nuclear command and control centers, including the Ministry of Defense's main operations directorate, the General Staff's main intelligence directorate, and the Russian Strategic Rocket Forces headquarters. The primary aim will be to disrupt Russia's ability to coordinate and launch a nuclear response. Similarly with China, the US's initial strikes would also target China's nuclear command and control centers, including the People's Liberation Army's or PLA's General Staff Department, the 2nd Artillery Corps headquarters, and key military bases and facilities. In North Korea, the US would target its nuclear facilities, including the Yongbyon Nuclear Scientific Research Center, the Neongbyon Uranium Enrichment Plant, and potential missile launch sites. After the initial strikes, with mushroom clouds rising above China, Russia, and North Korea's critical military and nuclear facilities, pandemonium on the ground, and their leadership in panic mode, the US would then unleash a bombardment of strategic, nuclear, and conventional strikes, whose primary aim would be to take out the enemy's ability to launch a nuclear attack on the US or its allies in retaliation. With both Russia and China, the US would target those countries' strategic nuclear forces, including ICBM silos and launch sites, SLBM platforms, bomber bases and airfields, and key military logistics and supply hubs. In North Korea, targets would include nuclear facilities and production sites, missile launch sites and storage facilities, and key military command centers and communication hubs. At the same time, missiles would rain down on tactical nuclear weapons storage sites, artillery and missile batteries, military bases and airfields, and other critical nuclear and conventional military installations and equipment across all three countries. Should any retaliatory missile launches be detected, the US would attempt to shoot them down as quickly as possible. With any such threats neutralized, further military resistance to the US onslaught would be in tatters. The US would then deal the death blow to China, Russia, and North Korea's ability to threaten the US for the foreseeable future, with a series of mostly conventional, but possibly nuclear, strikes on vital economic and logistical infrastructure, such as key ports and shipping hubs, oil and gas facilities, transport hubs like airports, stations, and bridges, and major industrial centers. China, Russia, and North Korea would be destroyed. Of course, it's always worth bearing in mind German military strategist and philosopher Klaus von Clausewitz's famous truism that no plan survives first contact with the enemy. That's why none of the nuclear war games that think tanks on all sides have played out result in a comprehensive victory for the US, despite the US's many advantages in the battle. Victory is likely to come at a terrible, possibly unacceptable cost. Nobody knows for sure, how could they? Since no one has used nuclear weapons against an enemy since 1945, everybody's systems, both offensive and defensive, remain untested in the real world. And since most people would prefer not to see most of the Northern Hemisphere turn into a nuclear wasteland as a result of such a nuclear clash, maybe it's better they stay that way. But what do you think? Does it make sense for the US to have changed its nuclear doctrine to focus on the combined threat of China, Russia, and North Korea? Or is Russia alone still the main threat? And if a nuclear war broke out, how would you go about destroying China, Russia, and North Korea? Would you use our strategy? Please let us know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for watching the video. Now go and check out How Would Nuclear War Between Russia and the US Affect You? Or click this other video instead.